Hello everyone, you are welcome to our class again. So today we are going to be taking a look at standard solution and primary standard under volumetric analysis. Okay, so we have primary. Okay, let's see, standard solution and primary standard. So what is a standard solution? A standard solution is a solution of known concentration. You can also define a standard solution as a solution whose concentration is known. Are we together? So, a standard solution cannot be prepared in the lab except in the availability of what? Primary standard. And a primary standard is a substance that is obtainable in a high state of purity. So the two go hand in hand, and that is why we want to take a look at them in detail. Are we there? So let us write. So we said a standard solution, solution is a solution of known concentration. Okay, so that is a standard solution, and you should not forget that we can have examples of standard solution. So example of standard solution is, so example, we have 2 molar H2SO4 is an example of a standard solution. Why is it an example of a standard solution? It is an example because we already know the concentration of this very particular acid. Are we there? So that is why it becomes a standard solution as an example. Are we there? So if you have a particular solution of an acid, a base, or a salt, you get to realize that the concentration is known. So that very particular solution becomes a standard solution. Now, you can also as well standardize the solution using a primary standard. Now, if you standardize it using a primary standard, then the solution becomes more standard, as the case may be. Okay, so that is a standard solution here. Then the next one, we have primary standard. We said primary standard is a chemical substance, obtainable in a high state of purity, purity. So that is a primary standard. When you have a chemical substance and you can obtain that chemical substance in a high state of purity, it becomes a primary standard. There is no two way about that. So in this case, we can have examples which we have here. So examples of primary standards include, so we have the first one here, which is we have pure iron, okay, which is Fe. So pure iron is a typical example of a primary standard, okay. Then we have also sodium oxalate. Sodium oxalate is also an example of a primary standard. Then we have arsenic trioxide. Arsenic trioxide is also an example of a primary standard. Then we have potassium dichromate as another example of a primary standard. Then we have potassium bromate. Potassium bromate is another example of a primary standard. Then we have potassium iodate. Potassium iodate is another example. Then we have potassium hydrogen iodate as another example of a primary standard. Then we have anhydrous sodium carbonate. Anhydrous sodium carbonate. So this very particular chemical substance is popular, and most of the times you find it very readily and available in the chemistry labs. Okay. Then we have another example, which is benzene carboxylic acid. We have benzene carboxylic acid. It's another example of a primary standard. Then we have potassium hydrogen phthalate as another example of a primary standard. Okay, potassium hydrogen phthalate as another example of a primary standard. So all these examples of primary standards listed on the board are very, very important for students of chemistry to be familiar with. Are we together? And you should be able to know. Some of them are salts, while some of them are, acids. So like sodium oxalate here. Sodium oxalate is a salt of oxalic acid. Okay, so which can be used with an alkali. If you want to standardize a particular alkali, you can now use these salts, because the salts can be serving as your primary standard here. Then we have this one as that is our oxide of arsenic. This is an oxide. So this is also an oxide. This is an oxide. This is also an oxide. So preferably these oxides, all of them are salts. Are we together? So you can see them there. Then we have another one here, which is potassium hydrogen iodate. This one is an acidic salt. Are we together? So this one is normal salt. Okay. So this one is an organic acid. Are we together? But a weak type of acid here. Then this very particular one is a salt. Are we there? So you get to realize that all these chemical substances we have here as examples of primary standards have their own features. They have their properties. So what are those properties of the primary standards that we have? So when we say properties here, we are simply referring to characteristics. Okay, so properties of primary standard. Properties of primary standards. So what are the properties of primary standard? So the first one there we have is 1. It must be in a high state of purity. A primary standard must be in a high state of purity. Okay? So, high state of purity. So, which means the primary standard you are going to use in order to be standardizing other solutions must be of higher state of purity, which means it must be free from impurities. Are we there? Because you are going to be standardizing impure solutions with it. So by the time it is impure, it means that the standardization is not going to be achieved. Are we there? Then the second one is hygroscopy. Free from hygroscopicity. Free from hygroscopicity. Now, what is hygroscopy? Hygroscopy is a phenomenon, is a property exhibited by chemical substances whereby when you expose them to the atmosphere, they absorb moisture from the atmosphere and do not, transform into solution. So, but you get to see that they are not pure dry, they are moistened. And in this case, they may trap some impurities from the atmosphere when they are absorbing some amount of water vapor from the atmosphere. So you can see that it must be free from hygroscopicity. So a primary standard must maintain this property. And the other one is, which is the third one, we said that it must be stable. That is stability. A primary standard must not be that very much reactive. Okay? It must be a little bit reactive. That is stability. It has to be stable. You know, there are some chemical substances that they are ever ready to react. Okay? So we refer to them as non-stable chemical substances. So a primary standard must not be of that caliber. Are we there? Then the next one we have is non-toxicity. Non-toxicity. So a primary standard must not be that toxic. You know, there are some chemical substances that are very toxic. They are not friendly. Okay, though all chemical substances have their own side effect. Are we there? So, but for the primary standard, the toxic nature should not be that high. Okay, that is what we are talking about here. So we all know that chemical substances are toxic. So, but when we say non-toxicity here, we are not referring to it should not be, you cannot keep away chemical substance from not being toxic. It has to be. But when we say non-toxicity here, we are talking about it should be less toxic. Are we there? I think that should be the better language to use here so that you can understand. So don't go and say chemical substances are non-toxic. No, they are all toxic. So then we have another one here which says the primary standard should be ready and cheap. Should be ready and cheap. So if you are in need of a primary standard to prepare in order to standardize a given particular solution, it should be ready and cheap to access. It should not be difficult and expensive to have. Though we all know chemicals are expensive, but they are somehow cheap to some extent. Is that okay? So it depends on the person supplying the chemicals to the lab facility. So that is that. So these are the things we can take for today, and I hope it helps a lot. So we are going to continue with preparation of standard solution. How do we prepare standard solution? And that should be in our next class by the grace of God. So remember to be reading your books at home. Stay safe, be good to your parents, and try as much as possible to revise your lessons on and on. Is that okay? So we pray that may the Almighty save us from this situation and we hope to see you back to school as usual. So with this, I'm saying don't forget to subscribe to my channel should in case you did not, and don't forget to drop your commentary. So I'm very happy and okay. So have a wonderful day. May God bless. Bye bye.